Deepwoken cosplay build video. Usually when I make my cosplay builds, I try to always go for the most accuracy for the character while still making it a pretty usable build. And for this time, I decided to go for Yuma from World Trigger, one of my favorite animes. Now, his moveset doesn't particularly spoil anything from World Trigger, so if you've never seen the show, you're still fine to watch this video. But if you haven't seen it, recommend you go watch it. World Trigger is absolute peak, so you should definitely check it out after this video. Now, first off for the weapons and drip, I went Fist with the Flamekeeper Cestus, as I wanted to base it more off of his black trigger that he uses, instead of the regular border issued trigger. To replicate his black trigger outfit, I chose the Summer Dragoon, because it was sort of a black outfit that was very similar. I totally would have used the Shadow Wisp to mimic Replica, except that would have taken way too many points just for one single mantra, just for a little bit of drip, so I decided not to do it. Then lastly, I went Etrian for the white hair, and then I also made sure to darken his skin a little bit, just so he wasn't super pale. And then I also dyed his eyes red with my last remaining dye packet. So I definitely gotta farm for more dye packets after this video. Now next up for the pre-shrine progression and stats, I actually had started out the build with Just Kurita because I wanted to pick out some Just Kurita mantras, but I also didn't pick any of the Just Kurita talents since I knew that I was going to end up with Wave Neve in the end. So you could still use Just Kurita for the whole course of the build if you want to, but personally I think the Flamekeeper Cestus with the Way of Neve fits Yuma the most. For the stats that I went for, I did 85 intelligence off the bat, since Yuma's battle IQ is super duper high, as he does a lot of on-the-fly thinking and has a lot of strategies that he comes up with while battling. And with that 85 intelligence, I went for talents like Neuro Overload and Approaching Singularity, and as well as I picked two very important mantras. The first one, Prediction, along with all of its talents, as it kind of represents his side effect that he uses, where he's able to predict when people are lying to him. And then I also chose another intelligence mantra, Ether Barrage, which replicates his Bolt trigger that he uses. I thought Ether Barrage was absolutely perfect. And when I first saw it came out, I was like, oh my god, I can finally make a Yuma build because this will perfectly replicate his Bolt trigger. After intelligence, I spec'd 90 into strength, since Yuma is obviously very strong with his black trigger, being able to take out neighbors in one hit. So with that 90 strength, I went for good talents such as Million Ton Piercer, Piercing Blow, and Broken Ankles, which also replicate his fierce fighting style, but are generally just good talents to have. I also picked up the mantras Strong Leap, which I think represents his bound trigger the most. And then I also even took up Sky Shatter Kick, but I'm not actually using it. But if you're making this build at home, feel free to use it yourself if you want to. For the last stat that I spec'd into pre-shrine, I went 75 agility, as Yuma is probably most known for his super speed and being able to take out enemies quickly. So with 75 agility, I got talents like Tap Dancer, Cheap Shot, Down Comes the Claw, and Air Counter, which are all meant to replicate his kind of fast speedster-like abilities, but they're also just good talents, of course. And then I also picked up the Dash mantra, which I had modified with a Spring Spark to replicate his Grasshopper trigger, which allows him to quickly dash around his enemies and to take them out. Next, while shrining, I made sure to spec 1 point into Fortitude and 1 point into Weapon, so that after I shrined, I had ended up with 38 Fortitude and Weapon as well. Now, I put 2 more points into Fortitude for a little bit more health, and also because Yuma is pretty sturdy with his black trigger, being able to resist a lot more attack than a normal person could. And also so I could pick up Exoskeleton and Warrior's Respite, because those are both really good. Then after that, I'd spec 20 into Lightning, just to be able to pick up the Lightning Stream mantra, which I thought represented his chain trigger that he sometimes uses throughout the anime. Then after that, you can spec the rest of the points into light weapon, so you can nab yourself all the light weapon talents, and as well as the Just Kurita mantras, Kurita Leap, as well as Kurita Dive Bomb, which I think both represent his boost and his bound trigger as well, that he uses a lot throughout the anime with his black trigger. And hopefully when you're speccing into light, you'll have enough light weapon to be able to wield the Flamekeeper Cestus, and then also make sure to get Way of Neve right after you get all of your Kurita mantras. There were also a variety of other talents that were good or that I thought matched his abilities, like Fist of Fortitude, which kind of represents his shield seal. If you want to see some of the other good talents, you can check the build link in the description, which should have all the information that you need to know about making this build. It even has a description, so make sure to check that out to see any other little tidbits of information about this build if you're trying to make this build at home. Now, next up for any extra abilities that you may or may not want to do. First, for my oath, I had taken Jet Striker, as it kind of enunciates his fast, agile fighting style, as well as for the mantra Jet Kick, which kind of is another mantra to represent his boost trigger. Then for the wind shackles, I also dyed them red to represent the red accents that are on his black trigger. I had went tacit, so I could replicate the chameleon slash bagworm trigger that he sometimes uses, so he could stealthily hide from enemies and sneak around. And with tacit, I also got tacit dropkick, which sort of represents his boost trigger as well. Then for my bell, I picked up Run It Back, which is sort of supposed to represent his Treon body and how he can bail out of fights. Though, to be honest, this was my first ever corrupted bell, so I sort of kind of had to pick it. There is some other bells that you could pick to also represent Yuma. Crazy Slots somewhat represents his scorpion trigger and how he shapeshifts it to fit certain situations while he's fighting. But I think the best fitting bell for him would have been teleportation, as it looks exactly the same as the bailout system on World Trigger. Unfortunately, I'm too lazy to reroll my bell for days just for a little bit of more accuracy. So if you want to do that at home, feel free to do so. I think that's about it for the build showcase. Now it's time to show off my shitty fighting skills, show some of the fights that I had with this build so you can get an idea of what the build is like. That's about it for the fights. I do have some more build ideas cooking up, but if you have any other suggestions, please let me know down in the comments. If this video gets 150 likes, my next video will be a full build progression instead of just a normal showcase. As for future builds, I was thinking I could either do Kirito from SAO with the Nocturne, or maybe a Bakugo build with Detonation. Just depends how doable those characters are. Also, one last note, I'm going to be attending Anime NYC this year, and I'm actually going to be cosplaying as Jin from World Trigger. So if you somehow end up there and spot a Jin cosplayer, come say hi. But I think that's enough rambling for now. Thanks for watching the whole thing to the end, and have a good one.